We went around and we talked to seven other presidents in 6 countries, and we got this amazing unity in referendum saying, like, hey, these guys are changing the way Latin America is, and we don't know their story in America when you think about it, except Peru and Mexico. Well, Peru and Colombia really are the 2 American allies in the region. So what struck me as as something that's historic, is that I've never seen these countries in South America, in a sense, unified by an idea of reform at the same time. Because in the past, when Chile or Argentina or Brazil happened, we picked off the reformers one at a time because they didn't happen in a unity. And this is the first time I've seen that since Bolivar, maybe. We haven't, going back to 1820s.
Well, what struck me also was, I think, the way you were able not only to present their viewpoints in terms of how they saw the changes in Latin America, but also humanizing them. Because for an American audience, the image of Hugo Chavez, of this firebrand, and then you have him on a bicycle riding around in the yard of his former home, breaking the bicycle. And I thought the most comic line in the whole film was when, after breaking the bicycle, he says in Spanish, whose bicycle is this? I guess I'm going to have to pay for it.
Listen, he's not rich. His father's not rich, and he was also a military man. And he comes from a poor family, and he is what he is. He works for the people. I've never seen a man work so hard. I mean, he really cares. So do all of them, by the way. Every single one of them I met was elected duly, democratically, which Americans don't know, and they serve the people, unlike a lot of the oligarchs and dictators who ruled prior, and we support it. But we're against these people. That's what amazes me. What is it about America that needs enemies and makes enemies out of these people who are reformers in their country, whether it's Allende or the people in Argentina or Brazil, or Torrijos in Panama, or the list is long. Why? Nicaragua.
You also center in on the IMF and the role of the IMF, which, again, most Americans know little about the operations of the IMF around the world. Yet in most other countries in the world, the IMF is well known.
Mark Weisbrot was with the Center of Economic Policy and Research, and he's a co-founder of that, and he brought that element into this. It's very important, and obviously Americans don't care about economics as much. It's hard to follow, but Mark points out that in the 1990s, there was about $20 billion in loans from the IMF to Latin America. Now there's about $1 billion, which is interesting. They got rid of it. And Nestor Kirchner of Argentina is a real hero here. He did technically default on the IMF, but then he paid them off, and he defaulted on the corporate bonds, which is a big scandal. But yet Argentina economy, which was predicted to be a disaster, improved radically. So did Chavez's economy for 6 years. It went crazy. I think the gross national product went 90% up 90%. Poverty was cut in half. So all these changes in all these countries have been positive since the IMF is out. They don't want our money. They don't want the loans. It's important.
We're going to go right now to a clip of Hugo Chavez talking about oil.
Chavez's reforms provoked fierce resistance from the country's oligarchy.
We have a government that lies. They're all a bunch of liars.
They controlled the Venezuelan media and used it to foment opposition. They also mobilized support within the military and received help from the United States and Spain.
I think the most reasonable thing for the president and his cabinet to do is resign voluntarily or disappear from the country.
A businessman, Pedro Carmona, was chosen to be the new president. He supposedly flew to Madrid to be measured for a presidential sash.
The coup against Chavez had one motive: oil. Bush made a plan. First, Chavez, oil. Second, Saddam, Iraq. The reason behind the coup in Venezuela and the invasion of Iraq is the same. Oil.
That was Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. Oliver Stone, talk about how the U.S. media portrays Chavez.
Well, all you have to do is go to YouTube and you'll see it. I mean, we put it in the movie. It's hysterical and outrageous. And by the way, mainstream Washington Post, New York Times, it's awful. I mean, it's almost as if the New York Times guy, Simon Romero is his name, he sits there for years and is a sniper. He doesn't say one positive thing. It's like every week or two he has to file a story, make it negative. It seems like that's a directive, and he goes out. I mean, you read this stuff. It's all of it, and he never goes to the other side. He never gets the other side of the story, and he does very complex little incidents, and he builds it up into this madhouse of. It seems like it's Chile again, like Allende. It's like the economy is crashing, and the contrary is true. I mean, it's a very rich country. It's a regional power. It's got apparently $500 billion barrels of oil in reserve. It's a major player for the rest of our time on Earth, as long as we go with oil. You know, they're not going to go away. So Brazil and Venezuela, and that raises a whole interesting thing about what recently happened in Iran. You know, when Lula from Brazil went over there with Turkey, Erdogan. That was a very interesting moment for me and for Tariq, because I grew up in the 50s, so did he, and we remember the neutral bloc. We remember Nehru and Nasser and Sukarno and a fellow in Cambodia, Sihanouk. I mean, there was a block of people who used to say, "Hey, this is what we want. This is not what the United States wants." And they were a mediator, a third rail between the Soviets and us. That's gone in the world, and people don't seem to realize it who are growing up. So when Lula did that, I couldn't believe the outrage by people like Tom Friedman attacking him, and it was disgusting. I thought, really disgusting, because he never presented the point of view of Brazil and Turkey, which are major countries, huge powers, regional powers.
And the New York Times, of course, before that trip, was blasting the possibility of Lula being able to negotiate any kind of arrangement, and basically saying he was naive, he was out of his league. And Tariq, your response to the impact of that deal that was brokered by Turkey and...
Well, I mean, everyone was surprised in the West that how dare these countries have the nerve to go over our heads and negotiate an independent deal with Iran. But this is what the world once used to be like. No one accepted U.S. hegemony unquestioningly, as many of these Security Council members do. The other point is that Brazil was very courageous to do this, Lula particularly, because Brazil has been trying to get a permanent Security Council seat for a long time, and they've now jeopardized that process. They will never be allowed it. So they did it for good principled reasons, showing the world Iran is prepared to do a deal. It's you who don't want to do it because you're permanently under pressure from Israel.
We're going to go to break and then come back. Our guests are Tariq Ali. He co-wrote South of the Border. Oliver Stone is the Oscar Award-winning director and screenwriter. His latest film is South of the Border. And he also has Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps, coming out. That's Wall Street 2. Stay with us.